Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a bright and refreshing Sunday. I am Bhakti Sadhguru, your today's host, and I am delighted to welcome you all to this special edition of SciChat episode 8, your go-to space for inspiring conversations in science and beyond. Today we have with us a truly dynamic guest, Shruthi Krishnaswamy, who will be guiding us through a topic that's on the minds of many aspiring researchers: how to apply for a PhD abroad. Whether you are in the early stages of planning your research journey or simply curious about what it takes to study overseas, this session promises to be insightful and filled with real world tips from Shruti's own experiences. So grab your coffee, settle in, and get ready for an enriching conversation. Before diving in, let's quickly and shortly introduce our today's guest. Shruti did her bachelor's and master's in Pondicherry University and her research master's in structural biology from Uppsala University. Currently, she is pursuing her PhD in I.G.B.M.C, France in structural biology. So the flow of the event will be like we'll have a question answer session, and then in the end we'll have a 10 minutes audience questions. So audience can put their questions in the chat box, or they can ask their questions directly in the end. So starting first with the question that, can you share your journey from India to France? Like, you moved to France. So, what inspired you to move abroad? Like, there is a kick in everyone's life. So, what was your kick to move abroad?
Hello everybody. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Bhakti. One of the primary reasons why I wanted to move abroad was to get more collaborations and also to get scientific insight on how research is conducted in other countries and what is the difference between the scientific research and approach to science between India and countries abroad. That was one of the primary reasons. And the second reason was my background was more towards microbiology, and I wanted to obtain a change of field. And I thought that it would also be a right time for me to move abroad and gain more expertise in structural biology. So that was another reason why I also chose to move abroad. And all these reasons combined, I think it was quite instrumental for me to land this position as a PhD student in I.G.B.M.C.
Yeah, that's great. Very nice. So, in India, there is different academic culture, and in France, there is very different. So, how did you prepare yourself academically and mentally for this transition from India to France?
Yeah, so I think that when I was in India, what was very instrumental for me was to gain more experimental skills. So I managed to do a lot of internships, do projects, and also my research masters in Uppsala University helped me a lot because I did a year-long project in structural biology, which helped me gain insight into whether I can actually do a PhD. Because sometimes I think that we in India, we tend to finish our masters and directly jump into a PhD because masters is much more theoretical. But then we directly jump into a PhD thinking that it would be the same. But research is completely different from masters. So I think that it's very important for everybody to gain some research experience to see if they can scientifically think and whether they can do a PhD, because a PhD is more research based. So I think that gaining that scientific experience is quite important. And also in India, we are provided with a very good theoretical background. So the theoretical background also forms a very huge basis for pursuing pursue graduate studies. So I think that both combination of both these theoretical and experimental skills definitely helps a lot when you want to pursue a PhD.
Yeah, so for PhD, theoretical and lab skills, all, like, every skill is needed, right? Okay, very nice.
Exactly.
So, so what were the biggest challenges or hurdles that you faced during this journey?
So the first that I would say was to constantly stay motivated to be in science. Uh, it's a very long journey. You start from bachelor's, you do a master's, you get some research experience, and then you do PhD. It's almost like a decade long journey for people who are doing a PhD. And to be honest, to stay motivated constantly, being self-motivated is very important. You cannot expect somebody else to motivate you to do your experiments or to do research. You have to be strongly self-motivated to apply to universities, at the same time to also be motivated to do science. And also you will always have people who might bring you down, who might say that you're not good at something, who constantly demotivate you, bring your confidence down. So you should also be confident in yourself to do science. So it's very important to have. This was very challenging for me to stay motivated constantly.
So this is the biggest hurdle, to stay motivated.
Yes, to do science, it's very, very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, So how was your experience of education in India shaped your work ethic and motivation in France? Like Indian education, how it helped you there in France?
So, as we know, Indians are probably one of the most hardworking groups. Even here, and when I was in Sweden or in France, I always noticed that Indians put that extra effort. They always want to keep up, and they are always involved in competition. I would say healthy competition. So I think that in India, that's what I learned, like how to constantly keep on working hard, how to put in my best effort. But in India, that's not the only thing I learned. I also learned how to work smart, because sometimes we don't have the necessary resources, and then we have to on the spot come up with some sort of alternatives, and that really helps you a lot when you're abroad, because you don't have to rely on the resources always. You can always come up with.
That's what we call jugaad in India,
Yeah, exactly. It's like jugaad. You always know what to do if you don't have one thing. You don't rely on resources. You rely on how to work smart. So it's definitely working hard and working smart. These are the two skills that I definitely think that India helped me develop a lot.
Yeah, very nice. So, okay. So can you highlight the key differences between the education systems in India and France? Like what is the difference, or what are the similarities that you find?
So, in regarding as research masters, if I took a couple of courses when I was in Uppsala University, and when you look at India, our courses are structured such that we have around 6 subjects for a whole semester. But in countries abroad, they don't have as many subjects. They have probably 1 or 2 subjects for a couple of period, like for 2 or 3 months, and they study that particular subject with deep focus. So it's there are pros and cons for both. But in India, I think you will get the theoretical background, so that you can choose what kind of courses you want when you move abroad. And with regard to PhD studies, you have doctoral studies for 3 years in France, which is extendable to 4 years, unlike in India, where we have it for a differing period of time. But in France, it's very set. So it's 3 years, and then it can be extended to 4 years. In India, you don't have. In India, you don't have teaching experience. In India, you have to teach when you are a graduate student, when you are a PhD student. On the other hand, in France, you can teach, but it's not compulsory to teach. So you have those entire 3 years only for your research, to gain research experience, purely to gain research experience. You might have to take few courses, but I think it does not take much of your time. So PhD, I would say, is not. It's not like a whole graduate coursework, unlike US or India. And in France, it's purely research based.
So there are pros and cons on both the sides, Indian and France education system, right?
Yes, I definitely agree, because I think that in India it's a bit more broad, so you can know what to do later on. I think that certain areas of education after a point, especially after masters, is very, especially during your masters, is very narrow, unlike India. So I think it's, it depends on what you prefer.
So is it like in France, the education system is more, straightforward and systematic, like that, something like that? Or
I wouldn't say systematic, but I would say that you really need to know what you want to do. Because if you don't have the necessary theoretical background, you would not know what courses to choose since they are very narrow. So in India, students would still be confused after their bachelor's. They would not know what to do. So masters would be broad, but at the same time would be specific as well. So you will have a lot of courses to choose from in India, whereas here you would have a lot of courses to choose from, but you can only do very few courses.
yeah.
So in India, you would still be doing, you can choose a lot of courses at the same time, you can also do a lot of courses. So it depends. If you know what you want, then I guess you would really think that the education in France or Sweden is much more better. But if you're still unsure, if you still want to explore, then I think that the education in India would give you the perfect stage to explore.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, how did you overcome the cultural and language barriers in France? Moving from here, like cultural barriers also in the lab, lab culture is also different in India and abroad. So, how did you manage?
I think that it's important to look at your lab fellows as your colleagues, as your peers, because as students sometimes we look at them as seniors. In India, we don't look at them as colleagues. We don't look at them at the same level. So it's important that you look at them at your same level, and then you have healthy discussions with your lab members. This stands common throughout Europe. It's not just France. And I would say that language barriers still, it's very difficult to overcome the language barrier, because in France, it's very much French. And but if you take academia, for example, most of everybody speaks English. It's not like there's a very set language barrier. The language barrier is mostly when you want to befriend them, since they are much more comfortable communicating in their own language rather than English. But if you want to discuss academia, they are very much fluent in French, and you would find that conversations with them regarding your subject can be very engaging. But I think the most difficult part of moving to France is the bureaucratic part, where you have to apply for your social security or residence permit, and the bureaucratic process takes a long time, and you really need to have patience to do all these. And then you should also learn how to be a bit more independent, be it in your lab or in your life when you're moving abroad. You would not have anybody to lean on. Even though you make friends, everybody, it's mostly like to each your own. So you should know how to survive independently when you are moving abroad. So this was something that I definitely learned when I moved here.
So maybe in the day-to-day life, you face the language barriers. Like we are going to grocery shop and you're not getting what they're saying, or they are not getting what you are saying. So
Yeah,
there might
exactly.
be issues.
That's just it would help a lot if you learn with the basics of language in whatever country you're moving to, be it France or any other European country. But so I took classes when I moved here for 2 months. You can also take it back in India, but most of the times the university itself gives you resources to learn the language, and it helped me pick up a few phrases. So at least I don't struggle when I move to for day-to-day activities. But yes, I would say that it really makes a lot of difference when you learn the language and try to go out and meet other people, not just your lab work, but also have a separate social life.
Yeah, okay, very nice. So you knew already, like a little bit French and
No, I did not know any French before I moved here. I learned French for a month or two, just to we put you on a platform to learn those basic phrases, so that you don't struggle when you go to a shop or when you go to the doctor.
oh yeah, okay, okay. Nice. So, okay. So, what role did your family and mentors play in supporting your journey, this journey?
Uh, like I think when you talk about mentors, I think I had really good mentors. They were very encouraging in the sense that they guided me on what kind of journey to choose. Like they helped me realize that they helped me realize without actually telling me that PhD is a good option for me. So a mentor would be a person who would guide you through that realization, and I had mentors who guided me to that. And also, I think that I had mentors who gave me good recommendations. So a good recommendation is very important when I was applying for PhD, and I think that these these mentors, they shaped the way that I performed science. Actually, also they shaped the way I was approaching a problem, because sometimes when there was an experiment that I wanted to troubleshoot, I always tend to just repeat the experiment without realizing or without thinking about what are the, what could be the other problems, why the experiment failed. But my mentors helped me think about, instead of repeating the experiment blindly, why did the experiment fail, so why, how to troubleshoot. So these were the
Yeah.
things that
So, the
my
thinking process,
mentors
they
definitely.
helped you in the thinking process, right?
Yes, they were really helpful with that, and also they gave me good recommendations. So it's combination of both.
Yeah, nice. So, okay. So, how did your Indian roots help or challenge your journey, like your this transition from France to India to France? Sorry.
So I think that you, sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Yeah. So, how did your Indian roots, like Indian culture, like your upbringing, and the environment, how did it help or maybe challenged you during this transition?
I think the worst part is, of course, I miss Indian food, and I also miss Indian festivals, because it's so colorful around, but around most of the Indian festivals around or throughout the year most of the time, because there's some festival or the other. So
Yeah.
I think that I miss doing that. I miss doing that. I miss participating in festivals. So I make sure that I participate in we organize festivals here, and I also, there's also an Indian community, a strong Indian community in Strasbourg where I live. So we make sure that we organize some festivals, and we take part in some kind of, we bring up some kind of cultural contribution, so that people here in France also could participate and know Indian culture better. So even though I miss that part of India, I make sure that at least I have a good close knit community of Indian friends who don't let me feel that way. So I think that, yeah, that would that would be something that I definitely miss in India, that I wish to incorporate when I'm here in France.
So the cultural part you miss the most about India, right?
Yes, yes, exactly.
So very nice journey from India to France. Very inspiring. So
Thank you so much. Thank you.
so what makes France, as you are doing PhD, so you know this key, what makes France an attractive destination for PhD studies?
Since I'm doing my PhD in biology, I can specifically talk for biology, that there are a lot of positions in France and Germany, and not just France but also in Germany. So in Europe, there are a lot of other attractive destinations which have a bit higher pay, but the number of positions are very less, like minuscule, and most of the times the positions are, they do advertise positions, but they always have some candidate in mind. But in France or Germany, they have a lot of positions, so there's a very high probability that you might land up with the position of your interest, because there might be positions around, but they might also not be of your interest. So there's a very high probability of landing a position in France or Germany of your specific interest. So that's one of that makes France very attractive for applicants. And the second is, of course, you get very good international exposure. You have people from different countries here. You have people from different parts of Europe and parts of like the eastern parts of the world, from China, Japan, and South Korea or South Korea. So you have a lot of people from these different countries, and this gives you a lot of international exposure. And you would know how to work with people from other countries. So this is also something that's very attractive in France. And the pay is good. I would say not the best in Europe, but still it's well enough. It comparing all these points, I would say that it's good enough. So this makes France a very good destination for PhD.
Yeah. So could you elaborate, like, how did you secure your position, your PhD position in France? Like, what were the steps that you took?
So what I did was I first was looking, when I was actively looking for positions. The first thing I ensured was to look for PIs who actually have an open position. So most of the times, I think students don't look at PIs who have an open position. They just randomly send cold emails. It does not make any sense, because if they don't have a position, they would never reply, and because they're not actively looking for students. So the first thing I did was to look for PIs who at least through some sources I know that have an open position. And when I mailed a professor, I got a reply saying that I can apply for the position through this particular fellowship. So I applied for I.G.B.M.C Bio Graduate Fellowship, which is the fellowship offered by the University of Strasbourg, the city where I'm in, to pursue my PhD. So he said that I can apply for this fellowship to get funding, or he also suggested that he has a self-funding. So in case I don't get the fellowship, he also said that he can take me as a student because he also has self-funding. But I applied for this graduate fellowship program, and then I got the fellowship, and right now that's how I came, like that's how I'm working in my current project. So my suggestion would be to mail these professors who through some sources have an open position. So the reason I came to know that my current PI has an open position is because I looked into this website of I.G.B.M.C Bio Graduate Program, where he had posted an open position. So I mailed him personally stating that it would be nice to talk to him, chat with him, and I also let him know that our interests allied together. So I made sure that I knew that the PI had an open position, and also that's how I contacted him. So it makes sense to also send cold emails, because sometimes the PIs, like my current PI does, he also will have self-funded positions. Like it might not be necessary to apply through a fellowship program, and they might have their own funding. So this particular aspect, I'm talking about France. I'm not sure how it's in Germany as well. So in France, you have a lot of PIs who have they have like a separate fellowship program. At the same time, they have their own funding as well.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So what are some unique aspects of the PhD application process in Europe as compared to India?
So the first is, you definitely have entrance examinations in India. You need to have some external fellowship through CSIR or DBT when you're applying for projects, research projects, or even when you're applying for PhD positions as well. And in Europe, it's not always the case. You also have, as I mentioned, graduate fellowship programs, which you have to apply for. Or else you also have self-funded projects by professors. So in the interview process or for the fellowships throughout France, mostly you have 3 stages. The first is the submission of your application, where you send your SOP and your CV. The second stage would be an online interview, and the third stage would be where they call you on site. So you would have on site interviews with lots of professors, and then you have your decision posted. So this is the process in France, or I would say in Europe as well. I'm not sure about the, how there might be some processes that you might not have an online, you might directly have an on-site. So that's highly dependent on the institute. But whereas in India, you have your entrance, and then you have your interviews, I presume. So as far as I've seen, the interview process in India is a bit more hectic. It's highly dependent. Sometimes you would be asked very, very basic questions, and then you would be moved on to quite complicated questions. And the questions are very general in India. It might not be even related to your project. It might be completely unrelated as well. But whereas in interviews in France or in Europe in general, all the interviews are highly focused on your project. So you should know the in and outs of your project. If you have not performed the project yourself, you would not be able to answer these questions. So it's highly important that you know the project quite well, and also you should know how to answer questions involving your projects. So the questions might be basic as well, but they might be related somehow to the work that you did. So it's important that you know your project very well when you're applying for PhD positions abroad. So yes, I think.
So in India, the process is quite hectic, and in France, it's like to the point, revolving around your project.
Yeah, and the third most important point is that you should be very independent. In India, sometimes you have your PIs groom you. They would, hand guide you through your project, through your PhD, but you cannot expect that when you're abroad. You will get guidance, but they don't hand guide you through your experiments. You plan your experiments, and then you can discuss your experiments with your PI, but nobody is going to write your calculation down on your sheet and give it to you. Nobody's going to do that, or nobody's going to tell you what is your working stock, what is your concentration, what's your working stock. Nobody's going to direct you and tell you that. So you plan your experiments, you take it to your PI, you have a discussion, and then you do your experiments. And the PI does not come and look at how you're pipetting. No, they don't do that. So you fail,
you have to be independent. Totally.
You have to be completely independent. And you should know that. That's very important.
Yeah. Okay. So how important is networking, and how did you build your connections during your application process? Like you said that your mentors help bringing the recommendations, but otherwise, how networking and your personal networking help in application process, and also the recommendations as well?
So for networking, I attended a lot of conferences, and during this, we tend to attend a lot of conferences, but for some reason we tend to keep quiet. We are very scared to approach professors, to talk to them. So even I was scared because when PIs or professors are presenting their work on stage, I'm too scared to raise my hands and ask them questions. It makes sense completely. But make sure you ask them questions at least after the session is over. So one thing that I did was I got an interview with a professor because they told that they do have positions. And what I did was, after the interview, I went to them and then I asked them questions about their project. So make sure that you ask questions, even if you're not presenting a poster in the conference. It's fine, it's perfectly fine. But make sure you do something that the PI remembers you about. So it remembers about you. So make sure you ask questions, something related to their project, and then silently try to navigate your way and ask them if they can interview, if you can interview with them. That is a very nice idea if you want to get their position. So it's highly important that you attend conferences as much as possible. And even in India, I think you have a lot of international conferences. Make sure to at least attend them if you're not presenting a poster. So it's highly important that you try to network through these conferences.
Yeah, so not only attending the conferences and international conferences, but to ask questions and to interact with the PIs, like
exactly, yes. Make sure they remember your face and do something to make sure that they remember
you. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, nice. So what advice would you give to students preparing their research proposals for European universities?
So I would say when you want to prepare for any research proposals or SOP, the primary important thing is your research topic, and the second would be to ask the right research questions. So sometimes everybody, whoever is writing SOP, would have quite identical first paragraphs. Very much sure they would talk about how they gained their interest in science and how they reached this level and then why they're pursuing their interest in science. It's quite identical. So if as students, if we know this, I'm pretty sure the people who are evaluating SOPs also would know this, and they would just circumvent this part. They would look at, of course, your research questions and what techniques you want to learn when you are with them in the lab. That's one thing. And the second important thing is to sell yourself. To sell yourself, you need to have actually some research experience back home in India. So it need not be something where you have published a paper. It's not necessary, but you should have the necessary technical and experimental skills for the position you're applying. So even if you have that, try to sell yourself as much as possible. If you have, mentored students, you've mentored undergraduate or other graduate students for in experiments, if you have standardized a technique, if you have audited classes, whatever you've done, try to sell yourself as much as possible on your SOP. So that's very important. They want to see how well you can sell yourself, but don't lie, don't exaggerate, but try to sell it. So if you've standardized the technique, it's not an easy task. It's like if you have optimized protein purification for particular protein, it's not an easy task. So try your best to sell yourself on the SOP. That's my biggest suggestion. And the second was, sometimes it's important to remember SOP is not everything, because we think that SOP is life changing, uh, a game changing idea. That's what we think when we're applying, but that's not always the case. So SOP is important, but it's important along with your skills and your recommendation. And SOP would be zero if you do not have the necessary skills, or if you do not have the necessary recommendations. So a strong application is a combination of a good SOP, your scientific background, and also your recommendation. This is very important when you're applying for positions for PhD abroad, especially in Europe.
So this could be the summary of our session, that good SOP, technical skills, and the recommendations already comprises of a perfect application, PhD application, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
So yeah, our next question is that only that can you share the tips on writing effective statement of purpose in to get a PhD in France or maybe in Europe? Anyway.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, make sure that you have a very good research question and very like a good set of techniques that you want to get out of the lab. So the labs do not just want to know what you have done; they want to know what you want to learn from them, because because you might have learned, you might want to change your field, or you want to
Probably she ran out or some network issues or something.
Yeah, I think she'll be joining back.
Mhm.
So hi guys, I take this moment to like quickly advertise my science community. So we are from the SciCom Synapse, as you all know. You all are our audience. Please do like, share, and subscribe our videos, our events, and stay updated to attend more such events. And please do fill the feedback form that will be provided in the end. And audience can also ask questions in the chat box, as I told earlier. So do post your questions in the chat box. We'll take it in the end. And Shruti will be joining back again. I think she is
Yeah.
facing network issues. Yeah, Shruti is back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm extremely sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yes. So as I mentioned, that it's important that you combine your research interest, and you also mention why you want to work in the professor's lab, why you want to work in that PI's lab. So try to ensure that you tailor your SOP such that you have the points of your scientific interest, why you specifically like working in the PI's lab, what research you want to do in the lab, and then finally make sure you write what techniques you want to gain out of the lab. Just like you want to learn from them, they also want to learn just like they want to learn something from you, because they know what techniques you want that you have done before. You also should know what you want to learn from them. So it's important to have a combination of both.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have your SOP tailored in that way.
Okay. Nice. So it's our last question. How do funding opportunities in France compare to other European countries for PhD programs? Like, how are they?
So if you look at funding opportunities, they are quite good. In most of the other European countries, they have position for which they recruit the student, and they give the funding for that position. But in case of France, it's not always the case. So when they recruit you, sometimes, as I mentioned, they might have their own funding, but the rest of the times they might not have that funding, and you have to apply for external fellowship programs. So it's a combination of both. So in both cases, either the professor pays you from their own existing grant, or the other case, the university would pay you. So it's either way. And in both cases, as I mentioned, you have a lot of PhD opportunities in France, and I would highly encourage you to apply and not think that I might not get it. So I think the biggest problem that holds many people back is thinking that they might not land the position. So don't be scared. Don't take a chance, because if you get it, you are great. You got it. And if you don't get it, it's okay. Just move on. There are so many positions. Take your time. If you don't think that immediately after your master's I should apply for a PhD, I should go. Don't think like that. Take your time. Evaluate your options, and make sure you choose the right. It's not just about moving abroad. Make sure you choose the right PhD position, you choose the right lab, and you do something that interests you. So make sure that you do all these things.
Yeah, nice. So Shruti, how would you summarize the whole process of getting a PhD, whether it be in India or in abroad? How would you summarize the whole process?
So I would say first, start off by looking into open positions. Make sure they are really interested in applying for these positions, because if you're not interested, then it does not make sense to mail the professor just because you want to move abroad. So make sure you're interested in the position. And third, make sure there is an open position under the PI you want to work with. It's not always on the institute. The institute is important, but it's not as important as your PI, because that's whom you're going to be working under. Make sure you do the right research. Make sure the PI has good set of students, and then the lab is publishing good papers. Mail the PI. You can mail the PI when he has an open position. If not, make sure that you apply for graduate fellowship programs as well simultaneously. Don't just rely on cold emails. Simultaneously apply for these fellowship programs, where sometimes the PI might not respond. So if you're applying for bigger institutes like Max Planck, the PI most definitely will not respond. So constantly apply for these big fellowship programs. At the same time, send out cold emails. Don't let either go. Write your SOP, tailor your SOP such that you write your scientific background. At the same time, make sure you write why you want to work in the particular lab, what research you want to do there, and what analytical skills you want to gain from them. And finally, I would suggest wait for it, be patient, and you'll definitely get the reward for all the hard work you've done.
Yeah, nice. So this is the end of our question and answer session. So let's move on to the audience questions. So I think they have put their questions in the chat box. Yeah. Okay. So Abida Anand is asking, can you please give some tips on how one can prepare a research proposal for applying for an university with least hope of rejections?
Well, sorry, with least hope of, sorry?
With least hope of rejections.
Rejection.
Yeah.
That's a really difficult question. So I think if you look at websites at universities, you always have the rejection rate. So, but that is not always the case. Like, you don't know how you can never know if you'll be rejected or not. That's why I say you should always take a chance.
Yeah.
So the least hope of rejection is, I would suggest, it's not always the case, but it would be highly helpful if the PI with whom you're working in India, if you want to move abroad, they have some sort of contact or some kind of connection with the labs that you're applying for. So even if they may not even be related to the lab, but if they have a postdoc experience abroad, or if they have some sort of abroad experience, then it would be highly helpful if you're applying abroad, because then sometimes the PI to whom you're applying abroad might look at your application, might think, okay, I know this person, or I know this person, so maybe the student is quite good. So that's something that has the least rejection rate as far as it's seen. So because for that, in that case, you should make sure that you work with a PI in India who has a connection abroad. So that you have to ensure that you do that in India. So I would say that has the least rejection rate, because Europe works through networking. So if you have a good network, if your PI has a good network in Europe, you have a higher chances of landing with a position. Like, when I say PI, I meant your research project PI or your master thesis PI. So if they have a connection in Europe, it has the highest possibility of having the least rejection rate.
Yeah. So networking lessens the possibility of rejection, right?
Exactly. Networking highly reduces the possibility.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question. Can you give some tips on how to not get stressed when you are getting many rejections while applying for PhD and few of PIs not responding? How did you keep it up during the journey? So it's all motivation again.
It's not just that. I think I was constantly nagging my mother. If I did not get a response, I would call her and say, I made this PI 2 weeks ago and he's not responding. So I would say have a person you want to vent to, because if you keep it within yourself, you become really depressed. So
venting is very necessary.
Yeah, talk to people, because they give you a lot of confidence that somebody will respond. So you would constantly have the hope that there would be some response and there would be some acceptance in your application. So I think one important thing is that people tend to start putting in very less effort by the time they start moving on to different applications. So when they start out, their effort will be very high when they are applying. And by the time they move on to few other applications, the quality of their applications and the hard work they put in start to come down. So make sure you have a constant level of motivation when you're applying. Not motivation, I mean a constant level of quality of applications when you're applying. Don't let that quality go down. And as I said, constantly have some sort of hope that you would get response. And try to work smart. Don't work hard. Don't just work hard. Work smart when you're applying. Like I said, look out for open positions. Don't just randomly mail somebody. Look out for these open positions. Try to establish some sort of networking. Try to establish some contact with them before you're applying when you want to send out cold emails. And when use some points, I hope my points for the SOP is also useful. Try to combine your research interests with the research interest of the professors that you want to apply for when you're submitting applications or SOPs. So when you do all these, your chances of rejection would come down. At the same time, you can have some hope as well.
Yeah. So it's again, networking and SOP and smart work.
Yes, exactly.
It's a combined effort.
Yeah.
So Daksh Mishra is asking how to increase our skills regarding biotech and microbiology. And one more question is like that only, how to increase our skills in bioinformatics to get selected by a particular university.
So bioinformatics skills, that's something even I'm still learning. The only drawback is that if you learn the skill and if you don't constantly use it, you'll definitely forget it. So let's say I'm learning Python or I'm learning R. The whole point, it defeats the whole point if you're not going to use those applications. So of course, having these basic skills could be helpful, but unless you're going to use them in your project, nobody's going to ask you to have these skills in your background. So ensure that if it is necessary for your area of interest, I don't know, if you want to apply for, let's say you want to do a project on some organelle systems, and then it would be really beneficial to have to learn image J for confocal microscopy, then yes, then it makes sense to learn. But if you want to apply for such projects and then you are learning Python, there is no relation between both.
Yeah.
So it does not make sense for you to learn bioinformatics skills randomly. Make sure you learn the basic skills related to the project you want to do, and then the rest during your PhD you will definitely learn. Nobody's going to ask you to be an expert unless your PhD is a bioinformatic position. If not, if it's combination of wet lab and then combination of dry lab, you can just learn the basics, and the rest you would learn during your PhD. So nobody's expecting you to be an expert if it is not necessary for your project.
Yeah. Okay. So we have to tailor skills which are necessary for our project, like revolving around our project. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So next question is, how many applications shall one do when applying from India?
How many is highly subjective. Depends on. It highly is dependent on how much you can choose to do how much ever you want. As I said, it's highly dependent on maintaining the quality of this application. So you can send out 100 applications. If they are of subpar quality, you will get rejected in every one of them.
Yeah.
So even if you send out 5 applications, make sure they are your best applications. And the number of applications also depends on your area of interest and what kind of university, what kind of labs you're looking for. So sometimes they might be quite narrow and there might not be a lot of labs working on that. So you're restricted to very few applications. And sometimes you might have a lot of labs, then try to filter them out, your top 10 labs, then try to apply for these 10 first, wait for the response, and then maybe move on to other applications later on.
Yeah. Okay. So quality matters.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is the last question. Okay. Anybody else from the audience? You can also raise hand and open your mic and ask your question. We still have time. Okay. So yes, so let's wrap up this event. Thank you so much, Shruthi, for joining. I would like to thank all our teammates who put their efforts to smoothless conduction of this event. Thank you so much, and a big thanks to our audience who enthusiastically participated and joined this event. Thanks to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best for everybody's applications, and let us know if you have any questions about whatever I asked, and let us know if we can be of any other help as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So, as I said, the feedback form will be posted in the chat box, and you have to fill it to get the e-certificate. Yeah, I have pinned the feedback form link, and you have to fill it, and you'll get your e-certificate. Thank you so much for joining. Do follow SciCom Synapse to get updated for more such events. Until then, think, grow, and share. Thank you.